Hello wonderful people. I feel like everyone has a game from their childhood that came out of nowhere, knocked their front teeth out, and then stole their lunch money before shredding the inside of their console, setting their house on fire. And for me, that game was Crash Twinsanity. Crash Twinsanity is a game that has a complicated place in my heart that feels sort of like a dull stabbing pain and makes me think, am I having a heart attack right now? I wasn't aware at the time that Crash Bandicoot games are notorious for punching kids repeatedly in the face. So when a younger and more naive version of myself was blessed with the option of choosing what game I wanted for my birthday, I chose this child crusher that fast-tracked me through puberty, turning me into a man of hard knocks with a chiseled jaw, grey hair and a beard. The ripe old age of 10. There's just so little room for error in Crash Twinsanity, and the checkpoint/life system is unforgiving when you're a child. I can still vividly remember the disappointment of beating a really tough section as a kid, only to die and be sent right back to the start of the level again. There was one section in particular that I could just never beat. There's this level in the game set on a battleship where a Walrus Chef chases you and tries to hunt you down and straight up cook you in a stew pot. This is terrifying enough, but on top of that, the game loves to throw levels at you in which you have to run towards the camera, so you have a limited amount of time to react to oncoming obstacles. The stress of these levels was always way too much for me. Being chased by the Walrus Chef whilst not knowing what was ahead of me filled me with such a primal fear that I just couldn't take it anymore. And eventually, I had to concede defeat. So I put the game away to gather dust with the rest of my failures. And instead I just played Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 2 Bush Rescue. Which is delightful, by the way. Since then, I've tried to move on with my life, accepting the fact that I will always be just another ingredient in the Walrus Chef's pot. To this day, the words of the Walrus Chef still echo inside me. Right before I fall asleep at night, I hear them emanating from the depths of my mind.
Yummy fresh meat for my pot.
But maybe it doesn't have to be this way. Maybe I shouldn't give up so easily. You and I aren't just ingredients for a stew. We're complex, beautiful, sentient beings who can laugh, love, and kick cartoon walruses right in the butt. My wounds have healed, and the time has come to go back and play through this dang game. We're about to cook our own stew, and Walrus just happens to be the secret ingredient. I grabbed my copy of Crash Twinsanity, put it into my original Xbox, and prepared for the fight of my life. And I kinda wish I hadn't. My poor Xbox hasn't been used in a while, and it sounded like it was in so much pain trying to run this game. Listen to its sad, clunky screams. It's gonna be okay, buddy. It's gonna be okay. Apparently even it's scared to face off with this game again. The game starts with a cutscene of Cortex in a wig trying to impersonate Crash's sister Coco in order to lure Crash into a trap. I have to say, it's a look that Cortex pulls off pretty well. The gameplay for the first half of the game is broken up into a few different styles and control schemes. There are traditional 3D platforming levels where you play as just Crash, platforming levels where you control both Crash and Cortex, weird stealth sections, and there's even weird pinball/snowboarding levels where you can control Crash and Cortex as they beat the living heck out of each other. Honestly, Crash is kind of a monster in this game. I mean, watch how he murders this blue monkey without remorse. There's even a part in the game where Cortex shoots this innocent farmer in cold blood, and Crash doesn't even bat an eye. Look at its stiff body twitching away. They then proceed to steal the farmer's power crystal, which Crash also doesn't have a problem with. I think Crash might be the ultimate anti-hero. Oh, and you can straight up murder some chickens by chasing them into nitro boxes so that they explode. The game even rewards you with a gem for your chicken murdering antics. To all my chicken viewers out there, you may find the following scenes disturbing. Just know that you served a higher purpose, my chicken brethren. I'll be honest, I've always been horrible at 3D platformers, so I'm definitely a bit biased towards thinking this game is an unforgiving nightmare, when it could just be that I'm bad and about as qualified to have an opinion on this game as a penguin with a rocket strapped to its back operating a spaceship. I don't know what it is, but I always feel like a pirate with a spyglass yelling, "Land ho, Captain!" as I launch myself at the next platform, only to misjudge my jump and tumble off the edge. It definitely doesn't help that the A button on my old Xbox controller sticks. There was heaps of input lag, and sometimes my controller had slight drifting problems. Hang in there, my beautiful chunky beast. I may not be good at hopping in 3 dimensions, but what I am good at is crawling. I don't know what it is about crawling around in a game that I find so entertaining, but I used to crawl everywhere in Super Mario 64. But alas, you can't crawl forever. Which is why I'm glad that there are sections in the game where you control Crash and Cortex at the same time. And these sections are generally less focused on jumping. In these levels, Crash drags Cortex around as they both cling onto a power crystal with their grimy little hands. With this control scheme, you can spin attack with Cortex, break boxes by slamming his giant forehead into them, and yeet him across gaps so that you can flip switches. These mechanics are even used in some of the boss fights, like in this giant totem fight in which you can throw Cortex inside of the golem to deal damage. Being able to control Crash both by himself and with Cortex in these different forms provides a lot of variety, and now that I'm a bit older and less terrible at games, I found myself enjoying playing through these early levels. I still died a bunch, but thankfully between my 10-year-old self and who I am now, there has been some form of development. What I haven't improved at though is these weird stealth boat levels. In this level you have to duck in and out of cover in order to avoid being spotted by sentries and towers. And if they spot you, they kill you with a rain of spears. This section is a great way to burn through a ton of lives if you're not careful. I love that the people in the boats couldn't care less that you're there though. There are these ever vigilant guys in the tower that are out for blood, and if they spot a single blade of grass moving, they'll immediately hurl 1,000 spears. But the people in the boats are just like, oh hey look, a bandicoot. That's cool. Well, too bad I'm on my lunch break. As I slowly worked my way through the game, drawing ever nearer to the Walrus Chef, I found that some of my favourite sections were the ones where you control both Crash and Cortex as they tumble like a 3D pinball through cave systems. These sections are so much fun, and for me this is where the game really begins to shine. It's so off the wall and ridiculous, and if you stop moving and let the characters idle, you get to watch Cortex slam Crash's face into the dirt before spanking him right on the butt. Crash seems kind of into it, and I'm sure that this was the starting point for many a fanfiction. But this isn't even the best bit. Easily the best iteration of this downhill racing gameplay is the snowboarding section. There's a level later in the game in which you get to play as Crash, who literally snowboards on top of Cortex down a mountain. It actually has pretty competent snowboarding gameplay, and there's something about grinding and flipping on top of Cortex that leaves a giant smile on my face. I definitely play a standalone racing game based off of this. Or maybe they should just include snowboarding levels in a Crash Nitro Kart remake. Online multiplayer for this would be amazing. After the snowboarding section, you end up pretty close to the entrance of the battleship, also known as the workplace of my nemesis, the Walrus Chef. I remember having so much trouble with the mice in the ship, but like a lot of the other sections in the game, not being a stupid 10-year-old meant that it was a fair bit easier this time. But despite the fact that the game wasn't giving me as much trouble, my stomach still began to rise up into my chest as I approached the moment of truth. I just had to get past one last boss, and then I'd finally be ready to face my destiny. I defeated the boss and watched as Crash tumbled into the lair of the Walrus Chef. Whew, I'm here. Like, I'm finally here. I'm ready to face my destiny. I'm wiser, older, I pay more taxes? This stupid Walrus Chef doesn't scare me anymore. I did some last minute research on Bandipedia, which is the Crash Bandicoot Wikipedia, and it turns out the Walrus Chef is called Rusty. And Rusty is a genetically enhanced Walrus Chef, which doesn't sound very food safe to me. Rusty, prepare to have the living Wumpa fruit beaten out of you. Rusty the giant walrus burst through the door, and I immediately retracted all my overconfidence as every muscle in my body tensed into one single giant stress knot. Oh god, I take it all back. Run, Crash, run! Years of fear and dread came rushing back in an instant. I was transported back into the headspace of my 10-year-old self, as though not a single moment had passed since the last time I was running for my life. I cannot begin to describe how much I dislike having to blindly run at the screen as gaps in the floor and boxes materialize before me. Who designed this place? It's an engineering nightmare death trap. I ran like a bandicoot from a walrus, which is a sight that not even David Attenborough has ever seen. In my head, the hallway lasted for an eternity, but it turned out to not be anywhere near as long as I remembered. And eventually, I made it. I made it! Oh my goodness, I made it! Yes! I'm not a stew. I'm not a stew. Oh, my life is complete. But I'm such an idiot. I'd never actually made it this far, and it turns out there's a whole other sequence to the level. Oh, what the heck? I thought I'd escaped. Oh, me and my tiny little heart. Give me some gosh damn space, Walrus Chef. I had to run down a whole other hallway, but thankfully, just running on pure adrenaline, I eventually managed to make it. Yes! Oh, no more. No more. The game tries to immediately throw you into another boss fight, but I'm done. I'm done. Please no more. Oh gosh. I don't know what to do now. I feel like my entire life has been leading up to this moment. It's such a weight lifted off my shoulders. I'm free. I'm finally free. I feel like I need a frolic in a field or something. Oof. Okay, I need to regain my composure for a second. I have to say that I enjoyed my time replaying through Crash Twinsanity, and maybe once I've had some time away from it, I might come back and even try to finish the rest of the game. Sure, it's a game that's a little rough around the edges, but It's packed full of charm and character, and you can't say that it's not ambitious in all the things that it tries to achieve. It's just a shame that it will happily ruin your life. Feel free to let me know in the comments what your version of Crash Twinsanity was. Maybe there's a game that you could just never finish, or a boss or a level that just was always too hard for you when you were younger. And maybe we can start a difficult and frustrating Video Games Anonymous support group. I'd also love to know your thoughts on Crash Twinsanity and the other Crash games too. As always, your engagement and support is so appreciated. I hope watching me avoid being turned into a stew has brought at least a small smile to your face, and hopefully we'll see each other soon.